and I just started basically shutting down. I started shutting down in school. I would sit there at school and I would just stare straight ahead, wouldn't say anything, wouldn't do my work, and I guess the teachers started noticing, and we had a parent-teacher conference, and I remember a teacher, taking me in a room and tape recording me and saying, what's going on or whatever, and, of course I didn't say anything. I just said that I wanted to go live with my grandmother. That was all I said. And from that point, they called my mother, my stepmother, and my father down to the school, and I guess talked to them about me, and things went really, really south quick from that point on. I remember it was very soon after that I was awakened in the middle of the night to go downstairs. I heard a bunch of dogs and everything barking, and I remember being like really groggy and saying, what's going on, and she's the one who actually came and got me out of bed and took me downstairs to the kitchen, and she stood with her hands on my shoulders behind me to make me look, and she said there's wild dogs that have gotten to the rabbits. And I remember my father coming into the kitchen with the white rabbit that was my favorite rabbit, of course, and its throat had been slit. There was red blood everywhere, and I took that as a threat not to ever tell what was going on in our home. It was really soon after that, I believe the next day, that my father, I don't know exactly the chain of events that had happened, but I have a feeling that she did that, and he went out there and found it, and when he did to bring it in, that's when she went and got me so that I would make sure to see that. And this is all happening when I'm 8 years old. My father actually took me to a neighbor's the next morning and said, you've got to watch her for several hours. I'll be back. And he took her and put her in the mental institution again, and she was admitted. I guess for doing that. I don't really know the details of that. I wasn't privy to that information. And then my father came back, and it was just him and I in the house. And that very same day is when my father raped me for the first time. I will never, ever forget that. I'm not going to go into any details or anything, but just, it was not good. It was not good. After my father did that, he told me to pack a bag of clothes, just a few things, and he took me to my grandmother's and dropped me off, and I didn't see him again for 6 months. He took off. He got scared because of what he did. And I thought maybe that the abuse was going to stop after that. It didn't. It really didn't. There were people that knew what happened. I know that my grandmother knew what happened. It was never talked about, though. It was never talked about. I believe that my grandmother took him to court and asked for full custody, and the only reason that she really did that was because she tried to enroll me in school. I didn't go to school for the rest of that year. I tried to go back the last month of the year. I missed a lot of school that year, and they weren't going to let me move on to the next grade, but my grandmother went down to the school and talked to one of the teachers there, and she gave me work to do all that summer and said that if I could go ahead and do that work, and that they would let me go ahead and pass to the next grade. So that is the only reason that I was able to do that. But they also told her that unless she was a legal guardian of me, that they would not permit me to go to school. So my grandmother actually made a deal with my father that he would not, it was his stipulation, not hers, that he would never have to pay child support for me. And he would sign over the papers. He didn't want to take responsibility for me. And actually, that is why I ended up living with him in the first place, because when I lived with my aunt and uncle, and they were actually asking him for child support, because, you know, they weren't getting any money for me to help raise me, and they were living off of Social Security, so they were both retired, and, you know, raising a kid isn't cheap. So that's the reason that I actually ended up living with him. He got pissed off with them because they asked him for child support, and he decided that I was going to go live with him. He really didn't want me. He just didn't want to pay child support. But it also gave him the ample time and free access to me 24 hours a day. So, you know, worked out for him, I guess. There was a lot of pornography in that was involved when he was doing the sexual abuse, and especially when I lived with him. There was, I think, one time that that was actually when I really started becoming aware that, you know, hey, I don't think that this is right. This shouldn't really be going on. And I think I said to him one time, you know, little kids don't do this stuff. They're not supposed to do this stuff. And he said, yes, they are. Yes, they are. And, of course, he, you know, got some books, some kiddie porn books, and said, well, see, look at the pictures. Yep, they do it. You know, that was his way of convincing me, in his warped mind. There was a lot of things that he emulated from the pictures that he saw in the book with me. One of those included, and I know that this is, you know, it's not any worse than anything else in the sexual abuse, but it's hard for me to say. I don't have shame and guilt about it, but it's just hard to say, and it's hard. I'm sure that some of these things are hard to hear as well. You know, my father actually urinated in my mouth just to see what it would feel like. You know, that's a pretty crappy thing to do, especially for a child. You know, that was extremely degrading to me. As a child, I remember crying. I remember actually going to the sink and washing my own mouth out with soap and water, putting soap in my mouth myself just to get the, you know, taste out. There were a lot of other things, you know, that went on with sexual abuse, and I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to go into those details. You know, when my father dropped me off and came back, he continued the abuse, picked up right where he left off. You know, and it included the raping, and that continued. They continued whenever he had a chance to do that. He would come and get me a lot of times when I guess it was probably when I was about 12 or 13. He used to really come a lot and take me to the drive-in theater. You know, oh, we're going to go to the drive-in, you know, and, you know, the majority of the time it was a sexually themed movie. I can't tell you how many Linda Lovelace movies I've seen as a child. You know, things like that. And what's amazing to me is, why didn't anybody notice that there was a grown man with a child in a car with everybody else at the drive-in? You know, I mean, I know that a lot of people turn their head to the abuse anyway, but if I was to see a grown man in a car, in a back seat, with a child, I'd probably be checking it out and saying, hey, what the hell is going on? and alerting somebody, security or something. Nothing was ever done. Nothing ever was done. You know, there was a lot of things that went on with my ritual abuse, and I'm definitely not going to go into those, because those, I don't have shame about those, but those are extremely graphic, the things that were done, and I know that it will trigger other people. So I'm really going to choose to not do that. But I don't have shame in talking about it. I think that it is very healing to talk about your abuse memories. I think it's very, it releases the hurt and the pain when you are able to say it. And I know the very first time that you say those words, it is so scary to open up to somebody else and actually say the words out loud to another human being. But let me tell you something, as it is just as freeing to release that pain of what happened to you and know that you are not your abuse. You don't have any reason to feel ashamed, and you don't have any reason to take on that guilt. Put the guilt and the shame where it belongs, on the perpetrator, on the abusers. They are the ones who did these behaviors to you and who should feel the pain and the shame and the guilt, and they need to be punished for what they did. I think I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to go into the ritual abuse. I was going to say a couple of things about it, but I'm going to choose not to. Maybe I'll make another video, maybe I won't. But the whole point of this was, you know, you don't have to feel ashamed of talking about your memories. That is the way that you heal. Oh, I know one other thing I was going to say is, you know, when I first started talking about this, it was one thing to write it in my journal. It was quite another to actually say the words out loud. Not only to myself, to say the words out loud to myself. Yes, this happened to me. Yes, you know, I was raped. Yes, I was molested. Yes, these things did happen to me. But it was another thing to say it to another human being. It's very scary to say that. I know that when I started talking about the memories to my, you know, my partner, Lovey, I thought in my mind that somehow my words would somehow hurt her. And that was totally inaccurate. Maybe it's because I felt so much pain and I felt so much hurt inside, and I knew how much that those words, the actions and the feelings, it was actually the feelings that I was feeling of verbalizing what had happened to me. I thought it had the power to hurt other people, and I think that that's what made me hold back for so long in not saying the words. It gets better as you go along. I mean, I've told my story to a few people. I've never told it in a public forum like this before. However, I do think that it's important to, you know, tell your story. You know, secrecy is why abuse continues to happen. And, you know, when you open up your mouth and you speak and you let your voice be heard about abuse, that is actually the only way that we are ever going to stop abuse. Abuse of any kind. Child abuse, sexual abuse, spousal abuse, any type of abuse. Open up your mouth and speak. It's okay. You don't have to be afraid to say what happened to you. And it's the only way that we will ever stop child abuse and sexual abuse and ritual abuse also. Okay? I think I'm going to end this video, and I hope you all are doing well. Hopefully this has not triggered you too much, but I did think it was an important video to make. Okay? Bear hugs. Bye.